Maya's fingers trembled slightly as she traced the lines of her latest architectural design on the tablet screen. The soft glow of her desk lamp cast shadows across the innovative curves and sustainable features she'd incorporated into what could be her breakthrough project, a stunning modern residence for one of the city's most discerning clients. After 5 years of smaller projects and careful networking, this commission could finally establish her reputation in the competitive world of high-end residential architecture. "This is exceptional work," Mark said, leaning over her shoulder. His cologne was too strong, his presence too close. Maya shifted away slightly, maintaining her professional smile. As a senior architect at Bradford and Associates, Mark had initially seemed like a mentor, offering guidance on navigating client relationships and construction logistics. Lately though, something felt off about his attention. "Thanks, Mark. I'm particularly proud of how the passive solar design integrates with the client's aesthetic preferences." Maya switched to a cross-section view, highlighting the innovative features that had won over the Hendersons, a wealthy couple known for their exacting standards. "The Hendersons." Mark's voice held an odd note. "They're quite particular about their architects, aren't they? Some might say a project of this scale needs more experienced hands." Maya's spine stiffened. "They chose me because of my fresh perspective and commitment to sustainable design. They've been very clear about that." Of course, of course." Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just looking out for the firm's interests. And yours, naturally. These high-profile clients can be demanding. Why don't I sit in on your next meeting? Just as support?" Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with an email notification. Her heart nearly stopped as she read the subject line, "Project Transfer Notice, Henderson Residence." With growing horror, she opened the message from the firm's contracts department. "Dear Ms. Chen. This email confirms the transfer of primary architectural responsibilities for the Henderson Residence Project, Project 2025-113, to Mark Davidson, Senior Architect, effective immediately. This change has been processed at the client's request. You will be credited as part of the project team. Please transfer all relevant files and documentation to Mr. Davidson by end of day. Regards. Bradford and Associates Contract Management." Maya's vision blurred. She looked up to find Mark watching her, his expression a mask of professional concern. "I was going to tell you myself, but the system processes these things automatically. The Hendersons reached out to me directly. They felt more comfortable with someone who has my track record. You understand, don't you? It's nothing personal, just business." The room seemed to tilt as Maya struggled to process what was happening. Her project, her breakthrough opportunity, was being stripped away. And Mark's words about the Hendersons reaching out directly, something about that didn't add up. They'd been so enthusiastic about her vision just yesterday. "I need to speak with them myself," Maya said, standing up. Her legs felt unsteady, but her voice remained firm. Mark's hand closed around her wrist, gentle but restraining. "That wouldn't be appropriate now that I'm the lead architect. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get proper credit for your initial concepts. This is actually better for you, Maya. You can learn from watching how I handle a project of this magnitude." Maya pulled her arm away, her mind racing. She'd seen the Hendersons' enthusiasm for her sustainable design innovations. They'd specifically sought her out after seeing her smaller projects. Something wasn't right about this sudden change, and Mark's too smooth explanations only heightened her suspicions. As she gathered her things to head home, Maya noticed Mark already on the phone with the contractors, speaking authoritatively about his design vision. Her design vision. The one she'd spent months developing. Her hands clenched into fists as she heard him take credit for her innovative solar features. That night, instead of giving in to despair, Maya began to plan. She would need evidence, allies, and most importantly, the truth about how this transfer really happened. Mark might have the advantage of seniority, but Maya had something he didn't expect, the determination of someone who had fought for every opportunity in her career, and the intelligence to know that true professional success required more than just stealing other people's work. She opened her laptop and began documenting everything, every interaction, every email, every detail of her original designs. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. And Maya was going to make sure that the truth came to light, no matter what it took. As she worked late into the night, a new email arrived, from Mrs. Henderson herself. Maya's heart raced as she opened it, hoping for answers. The message would change everything she thought she knew about the situation, and set in motion a chain of events that would test not just her professional skills, but her very understanding of justice and revenge. Mrs. Henderson's email glowed on Maya's screen, its words burning into her consciousness: "We never requested any change in architects. Someone else signed the transfer documents using my husband's electronic signature." Maya's hands steadied as clarity replaced shock. This wasn't just about stolen credit, it was fraud. But proving it would require more than just this email. She needed to move carefully, strategically. Mark hadn't just betrayed her trust, he'd potentially committed a crime that could destroy multiple careers, including his own. The next morning, Maya arrived at the office early, her face composed despite her sleepless night. She'd learned long ago from her mother that sometimes the strongest response was a subtle one. "Make them think they've won," her mother used to say, "while you gather your strength." Mark swept past her desk, emanating confidence. "Maya, good morning. I've scheduled a team meeting to discuss the transition. I think you'll find my vision for the Henderson project quite exciting." His smile held a trace of condescension that made her stomach turn. "I look forward to it," Maya replied, her voice neutral. She noticed Sarah from legal watching their interaction with subtle interest. Sarah had always been kind to Maya, offering quiet support when she'd first joined the firm. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya saw something like recognition in the older woman's gaze. During the meeting, Maya took detailed notes as Mark presented her designs as his own. Each time he claimed credit for one of her innovations, she documented it meticulously. She noticed others in the room shifting uncomfortably, they'd all seen her working on these concepts for months. The passive solar design was particularly challenging, Mark declared, displaying Maya's carefully crafted blueprints. "But I knew the Hendersons would appreciate this level of environmental consciousness." "Interesting approach," commented David, one of the senior partners, his eyes flickering between Mark and Maya. "It reminds me of that smaller project Maya completed last year, the Watson residence. Similar innovative use of natural light." Mark's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Great minds think alike. Maya's work definitely inspired some elements. After the meeting, Sarah caught up with Maya in the break room. "That was quite a presentation," she said quietly, fixing her coffee. "Reminded me of something that happened here about 15 years ago. Before your time." She paused, stirring her coffee with deliberate care. "The architect involved then didn't fight back. She left the industry entirely. Such a waste of talent." Maya absorbed this information carefully. "What happened to the person who took credit for her work?" "Oh, he's a partner at a prestigious firm now," Sarah replied, her tone carefully neutral. "But you know what's interesting about karma? It has a way of collecting debts when you least expect it. Especially when someone keeps detailed records." She placed a legal pad on the counter between them. "Just some old notes about contract law I thought you might find interesting. Particularly the sections on electronic signature fraud and intellectual property theft." That evening, Maya received another email from Mrs. Henderson, requesting a discreet meeting at her home. As Maya drove to the wealthy neighborhood, her mind raced with possibilities. The modern mansion came into view, her design, her vision, everything she'd worked for. She wouldn't let it be stolen without a fight. Mrs. Henderson opened the door herself, looking troubled. "Maya, thank you for coming. There's something you need to see." She led Maya to her home office, where Mr. Henderson was reviewing documents with intense focus. "Show her, James." Mr. Henderson looked up, his face grave. "We've been doing some digging of our own. Mark approached us weeks ago with concerns about your ability to handle the project. We dismissed him initially, but then we started receiving emails that appeared to be from you, emails that worried us. They showed a lack of confidence, suggested major changes to the design that contradicted everything we loved about your vision. We now believe those emails were fabricated." Maya's breath caught. The deception ran deeper than she'd imagined. "Do you still have those emails?" Mrs. Henderson nodded, pulling up a folder on her computer. "We save everything related to our projects. But that's not all. We found something else when we started looking more closely at the contract transfer." She paused, glancing at her husband. "Something that suggests this isn't the first time Mark has done this. And we think we know why he's getting desperate enough to take such risks." As Maya read through the documents they showed her, a complex web of deception began to emerge. Mark's perfect reputation had cracks, and through those cracks, Maya glimpsed a pattern that changed everything she thought she knew about her situation. This wasn't just about her project anymore, it was about something much bigger, something that could either destroy her career or become the key to her redemption. Her phone buzzed, a message from Sarah: "Found something you need to see. Be careful who you trust. Some battles need to be fought in the shadows before they can be won in the light." Maya looked up at the Hendersons, then back at her phone. She had choices to make, and each one would set her on a different path. The question wasn't just about proving her ownership of the design anymore, it was about how far she was willing to go to expose the truth, and what kind of architect, what kind of person, she would become in the process. Maya sat in her small home office late that night, surrounded by the evidence she'd gathered. Her mother's voice echoed in her memories: "Sometimes the strongest trees bend in the storm, but their roots grow deeper." The documentation from the Hendersons revealed a pattern in Mark's career that made her blood run cold: a trail of stolen projects, crushed dreams, and silenced victims. Her phone lit up with a text from her younger sister Lily, a corporate lawyer in Chicago: "Got your message. This isn't just about intellectual property theft anymore. Call me when you can talk privately." Maya's hands trembled as she dialed, remembering how Lily had fought her way through law school while working 2 jobs. Her sister had always been the fighter in the family, while Maya preferred to solve problems through careful planning and diplomatic solutions. "Maya," Lily's voice was tight with concern. "I've been reviewing the documents you sent. Mark's done this before, but there's something else. The timing of these project thefts, they align with major financial losses in his personal accounts. He's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. But they also become dangerous," Maya said softly, thinking of the calculated way Mark had orchestrated everything. "The Hendersons showed me emails he forged in my name. He was systematically undermining my reputation before he made his move." "Classic pattern of professional abuse," Lily replied. "He isolates his targets, damages their credibility, then swoops in as the savior. But Maya, you're different. You kept records. You built relationships. And most importantly, you didn't break." Maya glanced at her wall of certifications and awards, small projects that had earned her respect in sustainable design circles. "I can't just let him continue. The woman before me left the industry entirely." "Then let's make sure you're the last one he targets," Lily said firmly. "But we need to be strategic. He's got 15 years of connections at the firm. One wrong move and he'll paint you as the jealous junior architect trying to smear his reputation." A knock at Maya's door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw Sarah from legal, holding a thick manila envelope. Maya let her in, noting the older woman's unusual tension. "I couldn't send this through office channels," Sarah said, placing the envelope on Maya's desk. "Mark's been asking IT to monitor certain employees' communications. You're on the list." Inside the envelope, Maya found documentation of 3 previous cases where young architects had left the firm after Mark had taken over their projects. But more surprisingly, there were internal memos about recent financial irregularities in project budgets under Mark's supervision. "The partners are starting to ask questions," Sarah explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Mark's got dirt on several key people. They're reluctant to dig too deep." She paused, studying Maya's wall of achievements. "You know, I've watched you since you started here. You don't just design buildings, you create spaces where people feel safe, inspired. We can't lose another good architect to his games." Maya's phone buzzed again, an email from Mrs. Henderson. The client had discovered discrepancies in Mark's revised budget for the project, numbers that didn't add up. He was planning to cut corners on the sustainable materials Maya had specified, replacing them with cheaper alternatives while keeping the difference. He's not just stealing credit, Maya realized. He's actually compromising the project's integrity. The Hendersons chose those materials specifically for their environmental impact. Sarah nodded grimly. "And if anything goes wrong with the construction, guess whose reputation he'll sacrifice to save himself? He's already laying the groundwork, highlighting your inexperience in team meetings." Maya felt a calm clarity descending, different from her initial shock and anger. This wasn't just about her career anymore, it was about preventing harm to future clients, future architects, and the very principles of sustainable design she'd dedicated her life to. "I need to talk to David," she said, referring to the senior partner who had noticed the similarities to her previous work. He seemed aware during the presentation. Sarah's expression turned complex. "David has his own history with Mark. They were classmates in architecture school. There's a story there, one that might explain why David's never fully trusted Mark's rise in the firm. But be careful, office politics at this level can be brutal." As if on cue, Maya's computer chimed with a calendar invite. Mark had scheduled a site visit to the Henderson property for tomorrow morning, just him and Maya. The message seemed innocent enough, but something in its wording sent a chill down her spine. "He wants to show me his improvements to my design," Maya said, reading the invite. "Says it's a chance to learn from his experience." Sarah's face paled slightly. "Don't go alone. In fact, don't go at all. I've seen that play before. He'll use the private meeting to establish his version of events, twist your words." Maya stared at the invitation, then at the evidence spread across her desk. Tomorrow would be a turning point, one way or another. She needed to make a decision, confront Mark directly, gather more evidence, or find another way to expose the truth without putting herself at risk. Her phone lit up one more time, a message from Mrs. Henderson. "We've found something in the original contract that changes everything. Can you meet us tonight? Bring your sister if she's available by video call. We'll need a lawyer's eyes on this." Maya looked at Sarah, then back at her phone. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was more complex and dangerous than she'd imagined. Whatever she decided to do next would have consequences far beyond her own career. The Hendersons' discovery changed everything. In their dimly lit dining room, Maya watched through her laptop screen as Lily examined the contract clause, her sister's face grave in the video call. Mrs. Henderson's hands trembled as she poured tea, the fine china catching the soft lamplight. "It's buried in the supplementary documentation," Lily explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Mark didn't just forge signatures, he altered the original contract terms. The sustainable materials Maya specified aren't just preferences, they're legally binding requirements tied to the property's green energy tax credits. Substituting cheaper materials would constitute tax fraud." Maya felt the weight of this revelation settle in her chest. Mark hadn't just stolen her project, he was potentially entangling her clients in criminal liability. The teacup in her hands seemed suddenly fragile, like her career, like everything she'd built. "I trusted him," Maya whispered, more to herself than the others. "When I first started at the firm, he seemed so supportive. I keep thinking about all the times he offered guidance, wondering if he was just sizing me up, looking for vulnerabilities. Mrs. Henderson reached across the table, her hand warm over Maya's. This isn't your fault, dear. Predators like Mark succeed because they're skilled at appearing trustworthy. What matters is what we do now. The next morning, Maya arrived at the office to find an urgent message from David, the senior partner. Her heart raced as she made her way to his corner office, passing Mark's empty desk. The morning light cast long shadows across the floor, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into another trap. David looked tired, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Close the door, Maya." He gestured to a chair, then spent a long moment staring out his window at the city skyline. "I received some concerning information about the Henderson project last night. Multiple sources, actually." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Including an anonymous tip about financial irregularities." Maya kept her face neutral, though her pulse quickened. Sarah must have found a way to get the documentation to him. "I've had some concerns myself," she said carefully. 15 years ago, David began, his voice heavy with memory, "I watched Mark take credit for another architect's work. Caroline Walsh, brilliant designer, innovative thinker. She was my protégé." He paused, pain flickering across his features. "I didn't have enough proof to stop him then. She left architecture entirely, and I've carried that failure ever since." Maya leaned forward, understanding dawning. "That's why you noticed the similarities to my Watson residence design. Mark has a pattern. He targets talented architects early in their careers, people with innovative ideas but limited political capital in the firm. I've been watching, documenting, waiting for someone strong enough to fight back." He met Maya's eyes. "Someone like you." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Where are you? Site visit in 30 minutes. Don't keep the contractors waiting." David saw the message over her shoulder. "He's getting nervous. The partners are asking questions about the project budgets, and he's losing control of his narrative." He hesitated. "Maya, be careful. Mark's most dangerous when he's cornered." Maya stood, smoothing her skirt with steady hands. "I'm not going to the site visit. In fact, I have a meeting scheduled with the Hendersons this afternoon. They have some questions about the original design specifications." David's eyes widened slightly. "You're making your move." "No," Maya corrected him softly. "I'm standing my ground. There's a difference." As she walked back to her desk, Maya felt Mark's absence like a storm gathering on the horizon. Her phone buzzed again, messages flooding in. Mark, demanding to know why she wasn't responding. Sarah, warning that he was asking questions about her meeting with David. Mrs. Henderson, confirming that their afternoon meeting would include representatives from the tax assessor's office. At her desk, Maya found a small note in Sarah's handwriting. "See, Walsh called. She's ready to talk. You're not alone anymore." Maya touched the note gently, thinking of Caroline Walsh and all the others who had been silenced. The path forward was dangerous, but for the first time, she felt the full strength of the network forming around her. Sarah's quiet resistance, David's long-held regret turned to action, the Hendersons' unwavering support, Lily's fierce protection, and now, Caroline Walsh emerging from the shadows. Her computer chimed with a calendar update. Mark had scheduled an emergency team meeting for tomorrow morning. The subject line read, "Project Restructuring, Mandatory Attendance." Maya opened her drawer, removing the carefully organized evidence she'd gathered. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for her, but for every architect Mark had ever targeted. The weight of their silenced voices pressed against her heart, transforming from a burden into a source of strength. Her phone buzzed one final time, a message from an unknown number. "This is Caroline. I hear you're doing what I couldn't. Tell me how I can help." Maya sat in her car outside Caroline Walsh's modest suburban home, gathering her courage. The former architect had chosen to meet here rather than in public, saying some stories needed the safety of private spaces to be told. The garden was overgrown but beautiful, wild roses climbing trellises in deliberate chaos. Caroline opened the door before Maya could knock. She was younger than Maya had expected, her presence carrying in quiet intensity that spoke of hard-won wisdom. "You look exactly like I did, 15 years ago," she said softly. "That same fire in your eyes, not quite extinguished." Inside, Caroline's living room walls displayed intricate architectural sketches, designs that had never been built. Maya recognized elements that Mark had claimed as his own innovations years later. The sight made her throat tight with shared grief. "I watched you at industry events," Caroline said, pouring tea into delicate cups that didn't match. "Saw your sustainable designs winning awards. I knew it was just a matter of time before Mark noticed you too." Her hands trembled slightly. "The day I left architecture, I didn't just lose my career. I lost my voice, my confidence, everything I thought I knew about myself." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm teacup. "How did he do it? Make everyone doubt you?" "Slowly. Carefully. He'd praise my work in private, then subtly undermine me in meetings. Question my technical decisions, suggest I wasn't ready for major projects. When he finally took credit for my designs, he'd already laid the groundwork. Made everyone believe I was unstable, unreliable." Caroline's voice grew stronger. "But you know what I regret most? Not the career I lost, but all the other architects who came after me. I followed each case, collected every story. You're the first one who fought back." Maya thought of Sarah's quiet resistance, David's years of gathering evidence, the Hendersons' unwavering support. "I'm not fighting alone." "No," Caroline smiled, really smiled for the first time. "You're not. And neither am I, not anymore." She went to her desk, returning with a thick folder. Every project he stole. Every architect who left. Every pattern of financial irregularity I could track. I kept documenting, even after I left. Somewhere deep down, I knew someone like you would come along eventually. Maya opened the folder with trembling hands. The evidence was meticulous, dates, documents, testimonies. "This is why he's been getting sloppy," she realized. The pressure of maintaining so many lies, covering so many tracks. "Abusers get confident when they've gotten away with it for so long," Caroline said quietly. "They start believing in their own invincibility." "But Maya." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Tomorrow's confrontation isn't just about exposing Mark. It's about reclaiming our narrative. All of us." Maya's phone lit up with a text from Sarah. "Mark's in with the partners now. He's trying to spin this his way. But we're ready." Another message followed from Mrs. Henderson, "Tax assessor's report complete. The substituted materials would have invalidated our green energy credits. We've filed a formal complaint." Then Lily, "Legal documentation prepared. You have a whole army behind you, sis." Caroline watched Maya read the messages, her expression softening. "You know what I see when I look at you? Not just another victim of Mark's manipulation. I see every woman he tried to silence, standing up together. Some wounds don't heal until we help others avoid the same pain." Maya thought of her mother's words about bending trees and deeper roots. "Tomorrow morning's meeting, will you come?" Caroline touched one of her unbuilt designs, fingers tracing the innovative features Mark had later claimed. 15 years ago, I walked away in shame. Tomorrow, I walk back in with my head high." She met Maya's eyes. "We all do." As Maya drove home that night, her mind was surprisingly calm. She thought of all the women who had come before her, their silenced voices, their stolen dreams. Tomorrow wasn't just about her project or her career. It was about breaking a cycle of abuse that had gone on far too long. Her phone rang. David. Mark's getting desperate. He's trying to schedule private meetings with each partner tonight. But something's different this time. His usual tactics aren't working. He paused. People are finally ready to listen. Maya looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, seeing not just herself but echoes of Caroline, of all the others. Then let's make sure they hear the whole truth. The sun was setting as she parked outside her apartment, painting the sky in shades of defiant gold. Tomorrow would change everything, not through revenge or destruction, but through the quiet power of women standing together, reclaiming their stories one voice at a time. The morning light filtered through the conference room windows, casting long shadows across faces both familiar and new. Maya sat straight-backed in her chair, Caroline Walsh beside her, their presence a quiet declaration of strength. The room filled slowly, partners, architects, legal representatives. Sarah slipped in quietly, taking a seat near the back, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes alert. Mark strode in last, his usual confidence wavering slightly when he saw Caroline. Something flickered across his face, recognition, fear, quickly masked. He recovered, smoothing his tie. I appreciate everyone gathering on such short notice. We need to discuss some concerning developments with the Henderson project. Yes, we do. David's voice cut through the tension. He stood, his authority filling the room. But first, we have some other matters to address. He nodded to Maya. She rose slowly, feeling the weight of every silenced voice, every stolen dream behind her. 15 years ago, an architect left this firm after her work was stolen. Then another. And another. Each time, the pattern was the same: gradual undermining, manufactured doubts, forged documents. Her voice grew stronger. I'm here to ensure it never happens again. The evidence unfolded methodically: Caroline's meticulous documentation, Sarah's internal records, the Hendersons' contract analysis, Lily's legal findings. Mark's face grew progressively paler as his carefully constructed facade crumbled. This is absurd, he attempted, but his voice lacked conviction. These women are clearly coordinating to . To what, Mark? Caroline's voice was quiet but carried to every corner. To reclaim our stories. To protect others from experiencing what we did. She touched one of her old designs. You claimed this solar integration system as your innovation in 2012. But I have the original sketches, dated and witnessed. Just like Maya has for every element of the Henderson project you tried to steal. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward from where she'd been waiting by the door. We chose Maya for her vision, her integrity, her commitment to sustainable design. When you tried to substitute inferior materials, you didn't just attempt to commit fraud, you betrayed everything our project stands for. Mark looked around the room, finding no allies in the sea of faces. The partners' expressions were stone, years of suspicion finally confirmed. Junior architects sat straighter, something like hope dawning in their eyes. I built my career. He started. On stolen dreams, Maya finished quietly. But not anymore. The next hour passed in a blur of legal terms, formal statements, documentation. Mark was escorted from the building, his security access revoked. But Maya barely registered his departure, focused instead on the transformation happening around her. Young architects approached Caroline one by one, sharing their own stories of subtle manipulation and undermined confidence. Sarah emerged from her quiet role, revealing years of careful observation and protection. The partners, led by David, began immediate policy changes to prevent future abuse of power. Later that afternoon, Maya stood in the Hendersons' garden, where her sustainable design would soon take shape. Mrs. Henderson touched her arm gently. You know, when we first hired you, we loved your innovative approach to architecture. But now we see you built something even more important, a foundation of truth that will support others for years to come. Maya thought of Caroline, returning to architecture as a consultant, her years of unbuilt designs finally finding their way into the world. She thought of the junior architects, standing taller now, their voices growing stronger. She thought of Sarah, stepping out of the shadows to help create new protection policies. That evening, Maya sat in her home office, surrounded by her designs, past, present, and future. Her phone lit up with messages of support, stories of survival, offers of collaboration. But one message stood out, from Caroline. Today wasn't just about justice. It was about transformation. Every person in that room learned that speaking truth can rebuild more than just careers. It rebuilds hope. Maya touched her screen where the Henderson project plans glowed softly. The design had evolved, incorporating elements of strength and transparency she hadn't originally envisioned. Like her own journey, it had become something more profound through the process of being tested. Her mother called, voice warm with pride. "Remember what I told you about trees in storms? That the strongest ones bend but grow deeper roots," Maya replied, smiling. "You didn't just grow deeper roots, daughter. You created a whole forest." Maya looked out her window at the city skyline, thinking of all the buildings yet to be designed, all the architects who would now have the chance to see their visions realized. The future stretched before her, not just as a series of projects, but as a continuing journey of growth, protection, and transformation. Tomorrow, she would begin work on a new design, not just of buildings, but of a professional culture where integrity and innovation could flourish together. The blueprint was already taking shape in her mind, built on a foundation stronger than any material, the unshakable power of truth spoken in unity.